Hello, everyone. Today we're having a good friend of mine and also my roommate when we were pursuing our master's degree. And he is Andre Iman Shafroni. He's teaching at the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, the Department of English.
Yes, that's right.
And Andre, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to a healthy and also a fruitful discussion.
Right, right. So I've learned a lot from you, yeah, because, especially in
That's
the
not
topic.
entirely correct.
That's
It's
that's true. That's true
it's
because
it's actually the opposite.
no, that's true actually because I actually don't have any background in literature, and I think you are the right person because you have had your major in English literature in the bachelor's degree, right? And then for your master's degree, you also uh, have folklore and mythology, yeah, as your uh,
Yeah, that's
background
also
of history.
my minor background. Also, yes, that's right.
Right. So you are right now teaching at the Open University of
Yeah, one
Indonesia. Yeah.
University of Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka Indonesia.
Okay. So what classes do you teach? Would you like to tell us about your
Um,
courses?
Basically, I'm in charge of the history of modern thoughts class.
Mm.
So history of modern thoughts is it's a philosophy class. So basically, we discuss most of the great thinkers. But these are most of the time Star West civilization thinkers, starting from the early Greek philosophers until the modern one, until Sartre and also Michel Foucault. Those my first subject that I teach. The second one is the penerjemahan karya fiksi or also translation in fiction. So I happen to uh, have the opportunity to take care of this course. So I also made some uh, lesson plans, and also I asked students also to practice
Uh-huh.
translating some of the fiction works
Wow.
that I also happen to like. So that's the reason.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, penerjemahan karya fiksi. I also have the the book here. So when we teach at Universitas Terbuka, because it's most of the time is synchronous learning. So uh, we already have the book itself. So this
Right.
book, this thick book is actually we call it buku materi pokok or mm, main material sources, or we call it module. So inside there are, if you can see here, these are the some of the word fictions that I make my students translating, and also there are some uh, answer keys inside. It's so
Right.
these are the main books that I happen to teach at the moment. Okay,
Okay.
that's the
So right now you are exploring on the field of translation, yeah? That's also an interesting topic of discussion that we can further explore later on, yeah? Because
yeah.
that's
That's also interesting because I happen to talk a lot about translating children's literature,
ah
and also one of the uh, key component that we are going to talk today is the use of literature in the modern era.
right, right.
Yeah,
So you mentioned about translating literature. That's also, well, a field that is not really foreign to me because my major was linguistics, but at the same time, it's also quite new because in the field of literature, you know, let's just be honest, you're a very smart uh, person, in my opinion, yeah, because you know a lot of things, including the thinkers that you mentioned, yeah, Foucault and the others. So
mm,
uh, for everyone who might not know, Andre is actually a polyglot. Yeah, you can speak at least 5 languages, if not more. So
I think the same with you.
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, because you can speak Spanish. Is that right?
No, 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 not entirely Spanish, but I know some words in French also.
Right. So I think that background also helps you to understand more about
No.
literature,
Oh,
I guess.
well, yeah, yeah, more or less, I think.
Right, right. So,
But yeah, that used to be, but right now, teaching has consumed me a lot, so I usually I don't practice much these days.
okay, okay. Yeah, so what I want to say is that, that quite diverse background in
Yes. Hmm.
study and also in, uh, you know,
Yeah, it
your,
helps a lot. Hmm.
right, right. Okay, so talking about your background, your study background, your major was in bachelor's degree was English literature, and then you made this move transition to uh, folklore and mythology. At first, because my background was education and linguistics primarily, so at first
Yes,
I couldn't
I understand that.
see, yeah, so I couldn't see how those two fields relate at first, yeah. So
Yeah. Hmm.
could you explain how they both relate?
The reason why I choose a um, MA in folklore is basically uh, because I happen to have an interest in translating and also understanding uh, stories. So folk stories are also very fascinating, and folk stories are also one of the components of children's literature. So in the children's literature, one of the genre that are mainly discussed is the folk stories, whether it's going to be a uh, local folk stories or also international folk stories. So in terms of folklore, there are many genres, and most of the time it falls to the subgenre of children's literature. So by understanding folklore and also understanding the significance behind it, we can use it to not only entertain but also educating the children about the universal values that are inscribed inside these stories. So it's also important. So that's one of the many reasons why I decided to take this path of learning. But
Right.
it helps a lot if it opens eyes, it opens my eyes, but at the same time, it also uh, very uh, uh, how I should I describe it? It's a very fast. It's a very
Right.
big. It's a very big field to explore. So you have to make a pinpoint on what kind of subfield that we are going to partake. And in this case, is I happen to take the children's literature.
Right.
Mhm, mhm.
And you also mentioned that it's a very vast domain, right? So,
Right, the very fast domain.
and as I talked to you quite many times when we were roommates, you
Yes.
also helped me to understand that actually literature, folklore, and mythology, they have
Hmm.
the same realm in a way that they have the same aspects. For example, like
Yeah.
uh, each of those has some sort of story, and then, like you mentioned, they have the universal values that we can learn from, right?
Yeah.
So, in your view,
Hmm.
so in your view, what is literature, and do we still need it today?
Okay, so I think in regard of the questions, what is literature and do we need do we still need it today? Is that uh, well, I'm going to answer to the first question. Is that what is literature? Basically, it's any kind of form of reading that invoke our feelings and invoke our thoughts. So So it could be anything in form of the prose, and also in a form of poetry, in the form of pictures. Literatures can also take form in this form of pictures. Nowadays, some people also consider movies as a new form of literature. Well, the storytelling might be the same, but the form is different. Well, some people agrees with it. Some people might disagree with it. Uh, it's okay. Some people consider film as also as a part of literature, but in terms of the genre, I think uh, literature can take many aspects. So
Mm.
any kind of uh, works that deals with stories, and it has also elements inside it, intrinsic, whether albeit it's an intrinsic or extrinsic elements, we can still consider it as a literature. So whether it's canonical, it's uh, is just a simple literature or anything, we can still consider it. And the question is whether we need literature
Yes.
nowadays. Well, as a part of human beings, I think we still need literature to provoke our feelings, to to teach our children. I think it's very paramount. I think it is very necessary to children to be read books,
Mm.
not only books but also stories that might help them to shape their life. It's
Right.
also very important
Right.
for
So,
children, but for adults, well, a story can be also a way to explore other people perspective and other people view, to learn that there are other people in this world that must undergo such kind of feelings and also emotion in uh, in literary works. That's
mhm,
why I think literary appreciation is needed nowadays.
right.
Not as important as it used to be before, because in the old days in Indonesia during the 70s and the 80s, we have the uh, new generation called Pujangga Baru, right? So
Right.
those authors, they created a lot of new works, and people are still excited about it. And nowadays, people are more uh, keen on the new kind of form of storytelling. Well, it cannot be denied that these are also disruption, but also at the same time, literature must go on. The form of the storytelling is still the same,
Mm.
but it can take as many uh, how do you call it, shape uh, nowadays.
Right.
So the purpose of educating and also instilling values, I think it's still very important nowadays. So when we read literature, what do we feel? It's very important, and why we need such kind of feelings. Well, it's normal to be human, I think.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so uh, so we need well, I don't know, aesthetically appreciation, or we need a form
Mhm.
to
So,
express it.
right. So I'd like to highlight two main points that you have explained earlier. So you
Hmm.
mentioned the universal values, and
Yeah,
also,
that's right.
uh, in my words, literature shapes the way we live, right? Because when we were children, we were presented with stories, with literature, and
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, in that way, when you mention the universal values, I think the values in literature and you know, any stories that were read by our parents may
Yes.
shape our life, right? if we
Right.
really believe in those stories, because in
Mm-hmm.
linguistics we believe that people think in words, and if stories are words, stories consist of words. I think if we really believe in the story, it really shapes who we are, right? So what do you think of that? Correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong.
Yeah. The stories that our parents read when we were children definitely help us shaping, navigating the world that we see now. So literature contributes to the worldview that we have right now. The way that we see the world uh, actually uh, is the fruit of the works that we read. So parents in the old days, they usually they don't read storybooks as it is. So they tell the stories. So there's a difference between telling the stories and reading the stories. I think it's very important for parents nowadays to be able to tell the stories, not just only to read the stories to their children.
Right.
By reading the stories only, I think the children will lack of imagination. But if the parents try to tell the stories in their own ways, in their own style, it will help them
Mhm.
to remember the stories as they grew up. So it's very important, I think.
Right, right. So stories that have meanings, story that are meaningful, that
Yes.
contains values that are relevant to the children's life or
Yep.
parents' life in that case,
Hmm. Hmm.
may help them to, sort of find something to strive for in life.
Yes, that's right.
So, what do you think is uh, maybe the best example of literature that can help to provide that kind of universal values for us?
Well, in these cases, I think for Indonesian children is that we are presented with many folk stories.
Mm.
Well, folk stories are kind of double-edged swords. Why I say this? Because there are some values contained inside it, but some parents might think these values are not good for their children. For example, the story of the Kancil. Kancil is a trickster,
Mm.
and in the story. So
I remember
uh,
that one.
yes, so trickster stories. Sometimes uh, if we are not sure how to deliver it to our children, it can be double-edged sword.
Right.
Well, yes. So the students or the children, they will try to find a fast way, a simple way, without thinking the process. So this is one of the a double-edged sword. But at the same time, it also has some benefits. Uh, a lot of stories in our society, they they reminded us of the value of family, the family values, and also the helping each other aspects of our lives. This is very important also in children.
Mhm.
Helping others are sometimes the most important deeds, the most important gesture that are sometimes lack in our children nowadays. Saying thank yous, gratitude, and also those things also needed to be instilled in our children's daily life. So these, if the students know, if also the children know that they have to say thank you whenever they someone helps them, they'll say thank you. Or someone gives something to them, they'll say thank you. This is also very important, and I think that the view that literature is nothing but entertainment nowadays, it's merely wrong. I think literature does not only serve as a entertainment, but it also serve as an educating purpose. So it's a
Right.
tool. It's a tool for the children
Yeah.
to be understand. And I know that. some people might think that the what is the most appropriate age for children to be introduced to some of the themes in literature. Well, the themes that we consider relevant for the students or for the childrens are the everyday life theme. Children cannot apprehend, they cannot comprehend the uh, more difficult themes such as death, life aspect, and there are
Right.
also darker themes such
Mhm.
as disease, famine, and also there are also some of the aspects nowadays, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, United Nations also has produced a series of children's book, and it's in the form of picture books.
Mhm.
And the story tells a girl, a young girl, who deals with her anxiety of uh, of the COVID-19 pandemic disease.
Yeah.
So she was struggling to understand, and she tries to cope why she could not go to the school, why she could not see her friends because of the pandemics. So the books actually comes with the guidance for the parents and how to use the book to
Mhm.
teach the children about the anxiety caused by this pandemic. So this book, the story is called My Heroes. So it tells the story of Ario.
Mhm.
She's a little girl, and I believe it has been translated to more than 80 languages.
By
And we
United
can,
Nations.
yeah, by United Nations. If you can Google it up, you can Google it My Heroes
Mm.
by I don't remember the author, but it should fall under the category of under the United Nations. So
Ah.
it's on the United Nations website. It's been translated into more than 80 languages,
Mhm.
and it comes with the guidance for the parents how to use the book to teach the students or to teach the children the uh, the danger behind the COVID-19 pandemics. So this is also one of the form
Yeah.
of the usage of the literature, that it does not only serve as a recreational and also entertainment purpose, but it also serve as a educational purposes. That's right.
That's true. That's true.
Mhm.
And I think that's actually the primary purpose of literature because
Mhm.
children they understand better through stories rather than, for example, when we're giving them hard
Instructions.
facts.
Yes, hard facts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's the power of social sciences because, or literature in particular, because when we're delivering the education through stories or through literature, it will it will make the students retain the values longer than we when we provide them with hard facts or
Yeah,
things like
they will
formula.
remember it most of their lifetime, I
Right,
suppose.
right. So I think that's the power of social sciences or humanities, field.
Yeah, in the fields, yes, humanities fields.
Right. So one thing that struck me when I was your roommate at that time, we used to have the study desk, right? And then there's a shelf above it, yeah, above the study desk, and uh, you used to stack quite a lot of books on the shelf. And one of the book that was really interesting to me was
Yeah.
a book by Campbell. Yeah,
Okay, by
the
Joseph
title
Campbell.
the title is The Power of Myth.
The Power of Myths,
Yes.
Hero's Journey. Yes, those are the books. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so uh, that author, yeah, Campbell, I think was the one that helps me to understand how literature can be sort of relevant in our today's era, yeah. And
Yes.
it also helps me to find the relationship between my question earlier between literature and mythology and folklore, and even other, you know, the universal values, for example, that you mentioned. Yeah. So,
Yes, that's right.
uh, could you tell more about the author, about Campbell?
Yes, the works by Joseph Campbell, most of most of the time deals with the theme of hero's journey. So, what is hero's journey? Hero's journey is actually a series of uh, rites de passage, or we call it in bahasa Indonesia we call ritual menjelang dewasa, a
Mm,
rite of passage.
mhm.
So, hero's journey actually tells the hardship and the endurance, or the steps that someone must face when they want to reach adulthood. It's a
Right.
it's a metaphorically it's a metaphorically speaking journey that someone must take in their life. So Campbell used this allegory to describe that in the myth all around the world we have uh, a hero story, right?
Right.
A hero story is someone who strive to defeat evil, maleficent being, or evil purposes. In
Mhm.
order to conquer this evil, the hero must uh, go into a journey that usually involves them rising up and then falling, and then they have to rise again, and then they defeat this kind of evil beings. And that's why the hero's journey is a metaphor to our life. So this Campbell tries to find the silver lining between all of these literatures all around the world.
My next question is about comparative study between
Mhm.
Western literature and perhaps Indonesian or Asian literature. So, as a person who's uh, been brought to those two different cultures with a background of Asian culture, Indonesian culture, and uh, studying Western culture or English literature in this case, how do you find the two sort of contradict or perhaps similar to one another?
Well, those are two different realm, if I may say. Western literatures are brought under the the thoughts that the most of the time it comes from the free thinkers of the great Western civilization. So most of the stories they deals with the higher themes such as existentialism and also things like that. So it common themes in the Western literature. Isolation, seclusion, segregation. Those are the themes that sometimes occur in the modern Western literature. On the other hand, if we see most of the Asian literature, uh, it's much more colorful in terms of the uh, characterizations,
Mhm. So,
because it comes from the great stories. So we see a lot of stories in the uh, in the Asian literature, folk stories. They usually are sourced from within one single source. If this in this case is if it's a Buddhist text, that is going to be a stories about Buddha and also things like that. So a lot of fable stories about animals. They also source from this kind of text. Stories about deer, things like that. Snails. The story of snails prevail in most of the Asian cultures. China, India, Thailand, Indonesia, Korea. They have also snail stories, and most of the time it's about a mythical being hiding inside the shell of a snail. So if you can see the recurring theme are happens everywhere, whereas in the Western literature, well, I can say, yeah, it can be sourced from the text. It's a biblical text, but with a higher order of thinking,
Mhm.
and also some of the worldview that inspired by the thinkers of the Western civilization. These actually one of the underlying components that we can see. But there are also different things,
Mhm.
similar things. So time it's much more similar. But in terms of comparison, in contrast, those are the things that I said before.
Okay, so you're saying that literature reflects the culture
Yes,
and even perpetuates the culture
the
itself, yeah?
the idea, the source of the canonical texts that have the uh, that comes from a single source. It's much more common
Mhm. So
West,
it's
in the Asian literature.
right. So in both the Western and also Asian context, literature is actually much deeper than just entertainment. Is that right? Or do you disagree with that?
Deep beneath it, we can uh, more and more instructional values
Mm.
that we can find. So that's are the one of two things.
Okay.
Uh,
So perhaps it's my last question because
okay.
n- nowadays kids or even children, I don't think that they enjoy literature as much as we did when we were kids. So do you think?
Um,
Mhm.
the children nowadays, sure they don't lack an imagination,
Right.
and I never see a children lacking in an imagination department.
Mm.
What they lack is that someone who can those kind of
Right.
so that's the in the old days we read books and we imagine things, but
Right.
children in this era they are presented with much more content,
Mhm. So
a text that they have to read and
right.
respond for themselves, and they have to imagine by themselves.
Mhm.
They I'm not saying they're getting lazy.
Mhm.
They have to have someone. They just don't find it interesting
Mhm.
because they have much more visual contents nowadays. They are presented with a, stories
Right.
that uh, they are ready to explore, not by words itself, but someone who read the story for themselves.
Mhm.
In this case, is that the children nowadays they prefer to watch YouTube videos
Right.
rather than to read a 140 pages of nothing but only words.
Yeah, yeah. So I can remember when I was a kid, I used to believe stories. I mean, like, fables or similar things. I used to believe those things, even though at the later stage, when I grew mature, I realized that they were not true. But at that time, when I knew that they were actually not true as facts, but I still learned values from those stories, because as you told us, so we learn best through literature, right? We can remember stories throughout our whole life. So even though I later realized that they were not true, but I still remember the values, and those values are actually quite influential to my life, even
Yeah,
when
yeah.
I
For
when
action,
I'm mature.
for the action that we're going to make, there must be a driving force. You say that the point of myth and the point of the stories is not if this is stories, or if this is a form of storytelling, there must be something meaningful about it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any meaning behind it,
Mm,
but a myth, the truth at all, it must a meaningful
mm,
so well it was something that we cannot see not there. So yeah, an allegory, as I say, a metaphor for our life. So that's why
right.
this is the silver lining. This is the connection between literature, myth, and also the usage behind it. And these are the most important aspect in our life, that we must not think the story as something that are not true, but we must see it as something that has a meaning.
Mm. And if
Meaningful or not, it depends on us.
right, right.
So yes,
And for children, especially, if we get back to your notion of imagination, I think, literature by believing that it's true, even though later on they realize
yeah,
that it's
let's say
not
it's
true,
not true at all. Yes,
it helps. It actually helped them to imagine at that stage, right? By believing.
what right. So it helps we as a sometimes we forget that uh, there must be a cause and effect of what we actually
Right, right. Okay,
and
so mhm.
mhm,
So maybe
and
it's
it's
my
important.
right. Maybe it's my last question.
Okay.
So do you think that kids need to learn literature nowadays?
I think the appreciation, the
Mm,
way that the kids need to appreciate literature, doesn't mean that they need to learn all the aspect about literature, but they need to uh, ask questions. These are very important. Kids are starting to ask questions about the stories that they read. That's the
mm,
goal of the literature. It makes them appreciate that there are more things outside their world. So it might be other people experiences, and it might help them to be a complete human beings. I think that's the ultimate goal of literature, and I think that's very beautiful. I think.
yeah, because truth lies not only in facts but also in values.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So thank you very much,
Uh,
Andre, for this.
well, thank you, Mr. Ignas. Well,
Yeah,
these are the very engaging discussion, I think.
right. Yeah, it's a very fruitful discussion indeed. Yeah, Pak Andre.